finance and the taxation aspect. So we have with us today Director General Fu Jinling from the Department of Social Security, Director General Wang Jianfan from the Department of Taxation and Policy, from Ministry of Finance, and Deputy Director General Peng Lifeng from People's Bank of China, and Director General Li Junfeng from the Inclusive Finance Department from the China Bank and Insurance Regulatory Commissions. And also we have Research Fellow Feng Luzhao. Let me first give you some updates. The speaker is reading the latest figures for the epidemic, the confirmed cases, the suspected cases, the death cases, and etc. You are kindly invited to follow the official data released by the National Health Commission and contact the speaker for the specific numbers. So in accumulative terms, the death cases 1380, confirmed cases 63851, including the 1043 reduced, verified and reduced in Hubei province. The existing suspected cases 10109, close contacts traced 493067, and close contacts under medical observation 177984. For Hubei province, the newly increased confirmed cases 4823, including 3910 from Wuhan. For cured and discharged cases 690, including 370 from Wuhan. Death cases 116, including 88 in Wuhan. Confirmed cases 46806, including 32959 in Wuhan, including the 9278 severe cases, 7492 cases from Wuhan. In accumulative terms, the cured and discharged cases numbered 3862, including 2016 from Wuhan, 1318 death cases, including 1016 in Wuhan, 51986 confirmed cases, including 35991 in Wuhan, suspected cases 1154, including 473 in Wuhan. For existing suspected cases 6169, including 2585 in Wuhan. From Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan regions, altogether 81 cases, including 53 from Hong Kong, 10 from Macau, and 18 from the Taiwan region. The confirmed cases that I have reported include the clinical diagnosed cases. I'd like to note that in order to ensure the early detection and appropriate treatment for the cases and to reduce the case fatality rate, we have adopted some new calculation methodology. WHO has confirmed such revision to the methodology, pointing out that this methodology is more appropriate. So the increase in the number of confirmed cases does not show any influx of the cases. So Except in Hubei province, we've already had the 10th continuous drop in terms of the newly increased confirmed cases. And for several provinces, for 5 days in a row, for 3 days in a row, the number of confirmed case increase has already been kept below 5. So these are the updates. Now let's have the Q&A. Please identify yourself. First, on the front row, the journalist in black. Thank you, Mr. Mi. I'm from CNR.com. We understand that the local finance departments have offered policies to support the epidemic control. So what are the specific policies and measures? Thank you. Thank you very much for your interest in our measures in the finance aspect. So following the State Council and Central Committee of CPC's guidance, we've worked out a series of finance and taxation supporting policies in the Ministry of Finance. There has already been a daily reporting mechanism established, closely following the finance supporting measures across the country. By the end of yesterday, the financial budget for the epidemic at the central level has already reached 17.2 billion RMB yuan. And such budget is used for several aspects. The first is the 1 billion for Hubei province. This amount of money will be used specifically for Hubei province against the epidemic. Then 4.4 billion RMB yuan are allocated to provide subsidies and also the procurement of medical supplies. Then 500 million RMB yuan is allocated for the infrastructure development in Hubei province, including the 2 hospitals newly built in Hubei province. And also 9.95 billion RMB yuan is allocated for R&D and the general epidemic control measures. Furthermore, we have allocated budget for the research projects. At the moment, there have already been a huge sum of budget used for the procurement of the medical materials, the protective materials, and the subsidies. The central government has instructed clearly that there should be strong guarantee for the financial resources input into the epidemic control. The financial administrations at all levels will follow the guidance. For the central budget, we will closely monitor the situation and offer specific guidance to the localities.
So the funding support is guaranteed. Funding will not be a bottleneck of treatment. Funding is not an obstacle to the prevention control. You can feel assured of that. Next question, please. I'm from Economic Daily. I'd like to learn about the impact of the epidemic on financial market. Will there be further fluctuations? I'd like to ask Peng Lifeng, DDG from the Central Bank. disruptions from the epidemic is very much concerned by the general public. After the financial market was reopened as scheduled, there had been fluctuations on the stock market and bond market. But after that, major financial markets have been running stably. Currency market has been smooth and stable. Yesterday, the 7-day retro rate was 2.113 basis points lower than prior to the Spring Festival break. And for the bond market, there has been some decrease in the return rate. Yesterday, the 10-year Treasury bond has seen a decrease of 17 basis points. For the stock market, after the first day decrease, 7 days of consecutive increase have been witnessed, and even a historical high was hit over the past week. And for the exchange rate, we've seen some stabilization and rebounding. The two-way fluctuations have been kept stable for the exchange rate market. Usually, the financial market is very sensitive to the short-term disruptions. But after that, the fundamentals will remain unchanged for the mid to long term. The performance of the financial market in the past few days, investors believe the impact is temporary. It will not change the long-term positive trend of the Chinese market fundamentals. For the next steps, we will continue to monitor closely the epidemic unfolding, enhance the monitoring over the financial market, and prepare for the risks. We are confident that the financial market will maintain its stable and orderly functioning. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist on the second row on the right side. I'm from CNR with CCTV Group. The Ministry of Finance have adopted a couple of taxation policies, preferential taxation policies. And what have been the focus of these preferential taxation policies? I'd like to ask Mr. Wang Jianfan, the DG of the Taxation Policy Department with MOF, to take the question. I'd like to thank you for your question. On the 9th of February, the executive meeting of the State Council has made strategic deployment. After the meeting, Ministry of Finance collaborated with several other departments and issued altogether 4 notices, including 9 preferential taxation policies. And all these can be found on our official website. So if you are interested, you can go to MOF website to look for details. My observation is that we now have 9 preferential taxation policies, but they are very focused, mainly in 3 areas as we fight off the disease. First is for the assurance of supplies. The major manufacturers and the producers of suppliers enjoy preferential taxation policies. The incremental VAT credits can be refunded fully. Therefore, the procurement of manufacturing facilities, the income tax, without the refunding, it can be refunded first, so as to ensure a healthy cash flow. The procured manufacturing equipments can have their tax deducted. Compared with the previous accounting principles, the one-time deduction will help enterprises to enjoy a lighter taxation burden. Registration fees for these manufacturers can also be exempt. Apart from the preferential policies for the supply manufacturers, preferential taxation policies are also provided to the enterprises who transport the medical supplies. Income from the transportation of the supplies can be exempt from income tax. We know the epidemic may dent transportation, catering, hotel, civil aviation, and fast delivery, express delivery services. So we have adopted preferential taxation policies to help these major industries that are heavily dented by the epidemic. The public utility services provided, transportation services, delivery services. We know that in many cities, delivery services are essential for our fight against the epidemic because the income from the delivery of daily necessities is exempt from income tax. And also for catering and hotel industry chains, because of the insufficiency in the consumers, we will see a temporary loss surge. Our original taxation policy is that these can be digested in the next 5 years. But to ensure that compensation can be sufficient in the next 5 years, the State Council has decided that the loss compensation years can be extended by another 3 years, that is 8 years. And favorable taxation policies also go to civil aviation industry. We know the airliners have to contribute to the Civil Aviation Development Fund. However, the civil aviation industry was also dented by the epidemic, so they are exempt from the Development Fund contribution. Third category of taxation policies have been set up to encourage donation. After the outbreak of the epidemic, we saw donations from across the society. The existing taxation law requires that donation should be through a charity organization for emergency relief, so as to enhance the efficiency of donation. But now we encourage direct donation to enhance the efficiency of donation. So once there is a direct donation, tax can be deducted or removed. Enterprises and individuals have also donated. To the epidemic prevention and control efforts. Existing taxation law requires that there is a certain ceiling for the donation amount, but we have issued a provisional preferential taxation policy that all the taxes on the direct donations can be exempt. We also have the exempt from individual income tax on the income of medical workers. So all these preferential taxation policies adopted to support prevention and control efforts. We believe in the emergency response, in particular when all these efforts are moving into the most critical moment. These taxation policies will help businesses to reduce their financial cost, improve medical supplies, delivery, and help businesses to go through the rough patch, mobilize resources from across the society so as to realize the final win.
We will work together with the relevant departments and authorities to ensure the implementation of the policies. Thank you very much. Let's continue. The second row on the left, the journalist over there. Thank you. From Xinhua News Agency. I have a question concerning the micro and the small companies affected by the epidemic. The difficult access to financing has to some extent be addressed. So could you please share with us more details on it? Mr. Li, to answer your question. Thank you for your question. It is fair to say that there is some impact caused by this epidemic. For micro and small businesses, they are of a large number and they are more vulnerable in this epidemic, especially in animal husbandry, farming, traveling, cultural activities, and etc. In this context, their need for financing is also changing. Based on our study, there are three major changes. First, the tightened cash flow. Many macro and small businesses still need to pay their staff and employees while they don't have any cash income. So they need funds to address this difficulty. Second, the new increased financing need is quite large. Previously, because of the holiday break and the suspension of work, many small businesses will restart their operation and they will have an increasing demand for financing. The third change is to repay the loans and the increasing risk of debt or non-performing loans. So for CBRC, in this special moment, the Commission has worked out specific policies to help these micro and small businesses. We have increased the supply of financing. On the one hand, banks are required to increase their lendings to the micro and small businesses. Also, banks should provide high-quality lendings to the businesses to prevent them from the potential risks. It is required that the growth rate of such lending and also the number of loans lended to the businesses should both be increased. And the second policy measure is in areas or sectors that have been severely affected by the epidemic. They would be given more supporting measures to get funding. And also, there will be more support offered to the financial institutions in these epidemic-affected areas so that they can provide lendings to the micro and small businesses as early as possible. The third is to streamline and optimize the procedure for lending. The procedural requirements will be streamlined. And the businesses will be enjoying a more favorable environment to get loans from the financial institutions, and there will be green channels established to accelerate the lending process. The fourth policy measure is that for enterprises in difficulty, they will be given the support to extend their business. For the micro and the small businesses which are in difficulty, they would be given necessary support to extend the loans. By the end of June this year, originally there would be businesses who should repay their loans. But for such businesses, because of this epidemic, they will be given more time to repay the loans. Next, let's continue the question. The journalist in black on the third row. Thank you. From CCTV financial channel. The State Council has worked out the bulletin to support the normal function of the businesses. This bulletin has been well received by the businesses as they are in great difficulty. So, will there be favorable policies for these businesses? Let's have Mr. Fu to answer your question. Thank you for your question. Your question shows that you are watching very closely the negative impact of the epidemic on the businesses, especially the micro and the small ones. After the outbreak of the epidemic, for some sectors, especially the micro and the small businesses, they are gravely affected. Some of them have not resumed their work yet. So, guided by the Central Committee of CPC and the State Council, the Ministry of Finance, together with the relevant agencies, have worked out specific financial policies to support 5 categories of the businesses to restart their production and operation. They are companies or enterprises which will be supported greatly. They include the producers of medical supplies, the TCM suppliers, the producers for the daily necessities, and the producers or the service providers for the epidemic control, as well as enterprises or businesses who are engaged in transportation or logistics. I want to emphasize that these policies are specifically targeted at the businesses which are directly engaged in the epidemic prevention and control. We are working with the relevant authorities to help these businesses get back to operation, and also we will base ourselves on the current policies and the relative studies, and then work out relevant policies to guide future development, enabling the micro and the small businesses to reduce their pressure and get back to normal operation. Let's continue.
Thank you. From Dragon Television. I still have a question related to enterprises. The epidemic has put a dent in many businesses. So, what are the financial policies adopted to help them? I'd like to ask Mr. Peng Lifeng, DDG from the Financial Market Department of the Bank of China, PBOC, to take the question. We know there has been economic fallout because of the epidemic, in particular the epicenters, or those industries heavily hit by the epidemic, such as wholesaling, retailing, catering, hotel, and also tourism. Previously, PBOC on the 1st of February coordinated with the Ministry of Finance, CBRC, and the Foreign Exchange Administration issued a notice on stepping up financial support to the epidemic prevention and control. There are 30 specific provisions. It has a very wide coverage on key areas and also industries that are heavily dented by the epidemic, and universal help to support the real economy. So for the next steps, we will implement the 30 provisions to ensure the businesses heavily dented by the epidemic can enjoy the support from these 30 provisions. Credit support is one of the most important measures. I'd like to emphasize 3 points. First, there will be increase in the credit and loans to ensure the increase in the loans, and the price of acquiring a loan can be decreased. The fees will be cut, and the financing cost will be lowered. And we will also restructure the loan structure, increase the mid to long-term loans. We will focus our support on the micro and small businesses. We also require banks to enhance efficiency and shorten the time window of review and approval of a loan so that the loan can be provided as quickly as possible to the hit business. Second, many businesses have difficulty to repay their loans, so we ask banks to show flexibility in adjusting the deadline of loan repayment. Extension and renewal of the loans are requested for some businesses, in particular very promising businesses. Because of the hit from the epidemic, loan must be guaranteed. Third, the government financing facility and guarantee measures should be adopted to remove the counter guarantee measures, expand the guarantee scale. For the most hit regions areas, the guarantee cost must be reduced. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the fourth row on the right side, please. Thank you. I'm from CRI. I'd like to ask a question related to micro and small businesses. They are under great pressure and they have difficulties as they resume their businesses. What are the preferential taxation policies provided to the micro and small businesses? I'd like to ask Mr. Wang Jianfan, DG of Taxation Policy Department of the Ministry of Finance, to take the question. Thank you for your question. Yes, indeed, after the outbreak of the epidemic, micro and small businesses are very much concerned by the entire society as to how can they be supported and to go through the rough patch. I see many journalists have been asking the same question, and I believe it is a very popular hashtag. In our existing preferential taxation policy, there are already many preferential taxation policies for micro and small businesses. It can be seen from two perspectives. First, existing preferential policies for businesses do not have bias against the size of a business. In 2019, we had a major cut in the fees and the taxes. It has been institutional, long-term preferential policies, and all small and micro businesses can enjoy such business favorable taxes. It is a major preferential package of taxation policies. Besides, in our existing taxation policy, there are some earmarked and dedicated preferential taxation policies for micro and small business. I can report the major favorable dedicated taxation policies for the small and micro businesses. With a monthly sales income of more than 100,000 RMB, VAT tax exempt. If the annual sales is less than 1.2 million, their VAT is exempt. And the small business with an annual sales of less than 3 million, the actual tax burden will be lower than 10%. The ordinary tax burden is 25% for most business. So this less than 10% of the tax burden is already very preferential for the small business. Last year, we had another round of fee cutting. Municipalities have been delegated the power to remove 2 fees and 6 taxes from business. Localities have selected the ceiling or the greatest cut. Many small and micro businesses are still enjoying this cut of fees and taxations. 42 central level administrative fees have been removed. The water and electricity public utility fund contributions have been exempt. The disability insurance fund contribution has also been removed from the small and micro businesses. Second, we also have some dedicated earmarked favorable tax arrangements for small and micro businesses. My colleague Fu Qingling from MOF and also colleague from CBRC have shared the financial and the banking arrangements for the support. Favorable loans are provided to micro and small businesses. I'd like to highlight a few. Financial institutions exempt the VAT tax from the loan interest rate, and a credit loan within 10 million RMB. For business as such, the loan interest is exempt from VAT tax, and for the taxpayers, the guarantee and re-guarantee income will be exempt from VAT. For the loan agreements between the financial institutions, small and micro business exempt from the stamp tax, and for the provisioned commissions collected on small and micro business has a different deduction from the larger scale business. It can be deducted fully on small and micro business. So these are the major highlights of the financial facilities provided to small and micro business. And the third kind of taxation policies are oriented to improve the innovation by micro and small business. For example, scientific businesses are enjoying such preferential taxations to improve their innovation. The deduction rate of VAT on R&D cost has been increased to 75% of the total taxes. So all the R&D companies and the science and technology companies can enjoy such deduction, small business as well.
So for angel investors, the small businesses can enjoy more favorable policies. So I've touched upon the 3 major categories. And for specific details or other detailed information, you may visit our website to get the detailed information. The taxation authorities also worked out booklets elaborating on these preferential policies. Also, on February the 5th, we have worked out a policy document where the small businesses can also enjoy a lot of favorable policies. For example, for transportation businesses and also for the catering sector and the household service sector. There are big enterprises, but also small enterprises in these sectors. So the small enterprises or businesses can enjoy all these favorable policies. For the next step, we will closely monitor the implementation of the existing policies. Based on the results, we will work out more policy plans and response measures for micro and small businesses. The difficulties they are faced with will be highlighted, and we will try to help them and ensure the stable operation of the economy. Let's continue. The lady on the second row. Thank you. From Daily Economic News or the National Business Daily. This is also a question for micro and small businesses. In order to reduce the financing cost, what are the measures to help them? Thank you for your question. Indeed, for micro and small businesses, they are faced with more risks and have to shoulder quite a high cost. For CBRC and the CRRC, over the past 2 years, we've made every effort to help the small businesses and reduce their financing cost. Every year, we have worked out efforts to help them. And in the context of the epidemic outbreak, we plan to have the following policy measures to further help these small enterprises. First, throughout the year, the overall financing cost in inclusive finance will be further reduced 0.5 percentage point or more than that. The second policy measure planned is to guide the financial institutions like the banks to reduce the lending rate for the loans to the small and micro businesses. For provinces which are severely affected, the lending rate could be further reduced. You know, at the moment, the lending rate is 4.7%, but for areas severely affected by the epidemic, we encourage the localities, the financial institutions in the localities to further reduce the lending rate. Furthermore, the financial institutions are encouraged to discuss together with the micro and small businesses for the overdue loans. The banks and the businesses will work together to overcome the difficulties. Furthermore, we encourage the banks to honor their corporate social responsibility. For businesses which are severely affected by the epidemic, they would be given more support, like the reduction of the lending rates. Also, the arbitrary fees collected by the financial institutions in the lending process would be cancelled or withdrawn, and there should be fewer constraining requirements in the lending. The transaction fees should also be further reduced to help the micro and small businesses. So we hope to help the micro and small businesses to ease the burden. I understand that there are a lot of questions, but unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we can only allow 2 questions. The gentleman on the 5th row from Phoenix TV. I have a question for PBRC. We understand that there is a 300 billion RMB yuans of re-lending loans. So could you please give us more details about this policy? Thank you very much for your interest. We have this 300 billion re-lending project to support the businesses which are producing the daily necessities. And this is quite a favorable loan with a very low interest rate. There are some questions about this policy initiative, whether the lending is given out too slowly, and whether the lending is not of high quality. So indeed, these are issues we are also trying to address. Let me share with you the measures we have adopted. For the preferential interest rate for this particular lending, we have a list of the businesses, and this list has already been reported to the CBRC and to the PBC. So once we receive the list, we will distribute this list among the relevant localities and also the branches in these localities. So the branches are instructed to approach these businesses and help them to get the lendings. By doing so, we hope to establish the lending connection between the bank and the businesses, the relevant businesses. Up to now, we've already received a list of more than 1,000 key enterprises, and the lendings are being implemented quite efficiently. According to data available, the lending efficiency is about the lending implemented is about 2 to 3%. Also, let me talk about the measures adopted to ensure the quality of such re-lending. It is fair to say that this is not a project solely done by PBC. On February the 7th, Ministry of Finance, together with the relevant agencies have worked out a specific policy bulletin.
We require relevant departments to make contributions and implement solid measures in the following aspects. First, the screening criteria for the list must be clarified. The reporting procedures must be clarified. Second, the post-loan management should be carried out by the financial institutions to ensure the preferential loans have been channeled to the supplies manufacturing. Banking facilities must set up the electronic accounts to have the track and trace over the actual use of the loans. Fourth, the Ministry of Finance must monitor the discount rate implementation. Fifth, we've asked the National Audit Office to step up the monitoring over the entire process to ensure transparent, fair, and open use of the fund. If there has been any embezzlement, the provincial loans will be taken back and these enterprises will be removed from the support list. Accountability will also be ensured. If the financial institution has conducted arbitrage, we will also remove the financial institution from the eligibility of issuing preferential loans. The final question for the day. I'm from CNS, China News Service. To encourage banks to support small and micro businesses hit by the epidemic, what are the specific policy arrangements by CBRC? I'd like to ask Mr. Li Junfeng from the CBRC to take this question. Yes, indeed, at this unconventional time, the monitoring policy supervisions must be flexible and adaptive. We require the banking regulatory commissions at all localities should follow the principle that priority is given to urgent cases, special methods are adopted for special cases, precision policy implementation must be ensured. Banking regulatory commissions at all localities and banks are encouraged to make innovations. Best practices will be rolled out. On supervision front, we consider the following points. First, classification of loans. There are some overdue loans caused by the epidemic. Extension can be provided, and it will not be counted as overdue loan or non-performing loan. Second, improve tolerance against such so-called overdue loans in the epicenters or areas and business hit heavily by the epidemic. The tolerance can be even higher. Third, implement the requirement that due diligence should be performed. However, responsibilities can be exempt given specific conditions. In particular, overdue loans because of force majeure should not be considered as an overdue loan. We also encourage the banking facilities and financial institutions to provide streamlined procedures of a loan to these small and micro businesses. There should be some writing off of the so-called overdue loans as appropriate. So it is an unconventional time, and we need unconventional and innovative measures so as to bring us together and take our efforts forward. Thank you. With that, we've concluded the questions for today. I'd like to ask researcher Feng Luzhao from CDC to give us some scientific dissemination. Thank you. I'd like to answer some of the most frequently asked questions by netizens. Wells can be found on some masks. So some think confirmed and suspected case patients, when wearing such whelved masks, may lead to infection on others. Yes, indeed, it is a one-way valve. When you breathe out, it is a positive negative pressure, so the valve will be opened and there will be outlet of air. And there is no filter layer, so if a patient is wearing a mask with a valve, virus may be excreted from the mask. So we require that patients should not wear such masks with valves. Second question is that isolation of virus have been done by many scientific teams from the fecals of patients. So what should be the precautionary measures adopted by households in their toilets and bathrooms? Currently, the main transmission pathway of novel coronavirus is respiratory tract and format and droplets. Since this is an emerging infectious disease, our understanding of the disease is improving over time. We will closely monitor the research progress on the transmission pathways and give updates in the suggested transmission protection. Of course, hand hygiene should be maintained, in particular, frequent hand washing and thorough hand washing after excretion is also recommended. If there is no confirmed or suspected case in the family, an ordinary sanitation of the bathroom is enough. And if there is confirmed or suspected case in the family, then we can use the chlorine-contained disinfectant to clean the bathroom that the patient has used. We can also use the chlorine-contained disinfectant to rinse the frequently touched places. A habit of good hand hygiene, personal sanitation, personal hygiene, fully cooked food, and a good family or household hygiene can protect against infectious disease through GI tracts. The third frequently asked question is how often should we disinfect our cell phones? This is also a frequently asked question because we touch cell phone very frequently. So we recommend that after you go out, after you return home, you can turn off the cell phone, and after the cell phone has cooled down, you can use the 75% concentration of alcohol and other dedicated disinfectants for electronic products, including the sanitizer tissues, disinfectant tissues, to rinse the surface of the cell phones. If you didn't use the cell phone when you were outside, you don't have to disinfect the cell phone. The fourth frequently asked question is that if there is the joint use of the same washing machine with the patient during the incubation period, will that cause infection? As I've already emphasized, that the major transmission pathway is droplets. This close distance format through respiratory tracts. And during the incubation period where the symptoms are not in onset yet, the transmissibility during the incubation period is very much concerned by the general public. Domestic and international research has suggested that there is a high likelihood of transmissibility during the incubation period. However, the likelihood of passing on the virus through the joint use of a washing machine is very low. Thank you, researcher Feng Luzhao. I'd also like to thank all the guest speakers for taking the question. Tomorrow at the same time, we will hold the press conference. You are more than welcome to forward us your interested questions. Thank you.